Hello and welcome to the 2022 Boston College Arts Festival. I'm the Visual Arts Coordinator, Yifan Wang.
And I'm the Visual Arts Coordinator Assistant, Megan Cassidy.
And now you're listening to the Artist Podcast series presented by the Boston College Arts Council Office. Hi Andrea, how are you?
I'm good, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. And thank you for doing this interview with us and sharing all these wonderful ideas with us. So, brief introduction about yourself, please.
Brief introduction. I am a Venezuelan Mexican American. I am non-binary. I am an explorer of the gray area. I'm an English theater double major. I am 20 years old, and I am the older sister to a really awesome little brother.
Oh, thank you. You submitted 3 poems, and
Yes.
I want to start with you briefly talks about the ideas behind them and where do you get the inspiration from? Is there a particular piece you want to start with?
The first piece that comes to mind is called Martyr. So I wrote this poem actually for a poetry workshop class here, and the inspiration behind it was just kind of my frustration behind people of color's voices getting washed out by a lot of the more privileged white students on campus. So instead of me being able to talk about things that I've struggled with or other people within POC communities, just not being able to have a voice and having their voice overshadowed by just entitled privileged white kids who kind of, again, just are taking control of these issues.
So the first line of the poem is, I am a social justice warrior. Is advocate for social justice one of your passion or one of your most important thing or in life?
I definitely think so. Definitely coming out of high school, I grew up without a voice, and it was very hard. It was very hard growing up, and hearing my mom's stories and the stories of my family members and just of others, I think it's really important to advocate for social justice because we want to create a better world inevitably for the generations that come after us. And I want to be part of that movement and creating that better and healthier environment for them.
And do you think writing or like words, poem, it's one of the tool, a medium that you usually find your voice?
Yes, writing in general, I'm very much a writer. Poetry was something that I fell into actually while I was here at BC. I never really considered myself a poet until freshman year when I kind of started dabbling and going to the writer's circle, which is a club here on campus, and just having my poems critiqued and actually realizing that, hey, these aren't that bad. Yeah, just being able to hone my craft here has been super awesome.
Very interesting. I always think expressing find your voice through art is a very powerful tool because not as other medium art in general, whether it's literary art or visual art, performance art, it's more subtle, but then it's very powerful underneath it. It's like sort of like sneaks in without you noticing it and explode from within. So I think it's very interesting. And I noticed the 2 other poem you write also have this very, like you said, strong voice. And the other 2 are more about yourself, what not the honeysuckle, but can you talk about the I don't know, how do you say
Misliness.
Misliness?
So misliness was a reflection on a very hard part of my childhood. I felt like I needed to meditate on this one part of my life of my father not really being present anymore and what that transition was like. I felt like I was holding on to the past, and I needed to just be able to let it go. And in order to let it go, I kind of just needed to put it down on paper.
Interesting. Do you think the past is a very influential element in life or in your creativity?
I think the past is super important in the present. I mean, everything that happens before you is what shapes you into who you are currently and who you're going to be in the future. And I think coming to peace with things that have happened in your past is something that's very, very, very important.
Mm.
Um,
So writing poem and writing it down, put it into words, it's a way of reconciliation about the past and about the pain that you suffered from the past.
that, as well as being able to take that weight off of myself and being able to
Mm,
put it and transfer it elsewhere. So being able to type it out on a laptop or write it down in my notebook
mm,
is just less weight for me to carry and for me to put somewhere else. So I
mm,
can go back and I can reflect on these things, and it's not pushing it away or denying the experience or forgetting the experience. It's about being able to let go and be okay with letting go.
mm. Wow, I love that. Yeah, sometimes the hardest thing for us is to forgive ourselves and forgive things that happen in our life and let it go. And yeah, sometimes I found you need to be accord with yourself, and then you can move forward and accept what happened has happened, and move on. The last piece we haven't talked about is called Honeysuckle. Could you elaborate more on that piece too?
Yes, Honeysuckle is probably my favorite poem that I submitted. So, the way that this poem came about was I needed to submit 7 weekly poems for a poetry workshop. I was really in this funk, and I asked one of my friends to send me an emotion or like a feeling or a mood. And they sent me the word nostalgia. So, thinking
Mm.
back in my childhood, I was thinking of how I was taught how to suck the nectar out of a honeysuckle
Ah,
flower. And so I kind of was reflecting on that and really loving my inner child. So that is what that poem is about. It's about me really being able to appreciate and love my inner child and be able to appreciate everything that
mm,
I kind of overcame, and where being able to look on the past and be proud of where I am now.
very nice. I think for artists, especially nostalgia and is that the inner child are some of the most important characteristic for an artist. And nostalgia is like it brings so many sentiments, and for an inner child it brings curiosity. And as an artist, it's very important to be curious about the world around you, even though you're in your 80s, you still have that inner child within you. And that's what keeps bringing inspiration to creativity. And I really love this line in your poem that it says, is it, I fell in love with the world and a girl and some flowers. It's very, I just love the way you said it. I fell in love with the world. And is it a mindset you always keep as a reminder, or is it just like expression?
I think with that line, a little bit of sort of my Buddhist learning has kind of shown through. So the idea of like universal love and loving everyone despite any actions that they do, and just being able to have overwhelming empathy and sympathy for others. But it's being able to tap into my inner child and be able to still be curious about the world and still want to explore, that like really makes me excited to like move forward and progress into adulthood.
Mm. Is there a particular line you really want to talk about and elaborate on in the poems?
I think in Martyr, I just wanted to bring up not a line in particular, but what I was trying to do, and this might be over explaining the poem, but I was playing around with capitalization, kind of seeing where the importance lies and playing with like power dynamics within the poem.
It reminds me of I'm an art history major. One of the reading we did, I forgot the author, but I think he is German, and in German you capitalize every noun. So every noun first letter is capitalized, but then he wrote everything in small letters, lowercase letters. And also that one, your act also reminds me of that. Even though in English you don't do that as in German grammar, but still you have you, especially in the middle of the sentence. And do you think that it's like a stress on an agency of the reader or yourself when you deliberately put you in the middle of the line instead of in the beginning?
With that, I was trying to put the power with, again, the privileged sort of white people who are trying to overstep the POCs that they are so-called like trying to help and benefit. This poem, actually, I wrote it because I saw an Instagram post saying, as a white person, as white people, we need to use our white privilege to help others. And to me, it just felt like I was being belittled and that I was going to be a charity case. And that's so not the case for so many POCs, because we've endured so much through history, throughout time. And we don't need anyone to hold our hand. What we need is just the ability to speak. I wanted it to feel uncomfortable. Seeing a lowercase I on its own, I feel, is very, very uncomfortable to look at because it's wrong internally. So I wanted that uneasiness for the reader, because that's the uneasiness that a lot of POCs face every single day. I wanted that discomfort to come through.
And the title too, do you meant it to be all lower cases?
I wanted the focus to really be who is the important one here, because again, and the title Martyr came from just all of the people who passed due to police brutality. So I was thinking towards like George Floyd, Breonna Taylor. It's like, these are people who are dying for our cause, for our ability to have rights, for our ability to exist. The fact that even they don't get to be capitalized is something that I wanted to highlight, because even though they are dying, and there are plenty of people who continue to die based off of racial discrimination, hate crimes, police brutality, we still don't get the time of day that we deserve.
Very powerful. I think as a poet, unlike painters, you have colors and mediums to play around with. And for writers, you have the word. And in English writing, you use capitalization and lower cases to express that. I found it very, very powerful. And like you said, it does brings this uneasiness when you're reading it. And that's the point of it too. If you feel comfortable, I want to invite you to read one of your poems to us. Is that okay?
Yeah. Honeysuckle. I watched a girl dance in the rain. Her dress clung to her skin. I wish I could have kissed her and tasted honeysuckles. She didn't notice me there, with her arms outstretched. She closed her eyes and smiled into the sky. I could have shown her how to suck the nectar from the flowers she resembled, but I couldn't bring myself to interrupt. I fell in love with the world and a girl and some flowers.
Thank you for reading that for us.
No, of course. Thank you for having me.
Of course. Thank you for sharing all this great stories and ideas behind the scene and gave a more comprehensive perspective of your works. Well, thank you so much, Andrea.
Thank you.